พ่อก่อนดีกว่าเพราะผมเราปิดข้างหลังถามเราพอแล้วนะได้ไหมชาติคนชาติหนึ่งให้หนึ่ง
Hey everyone, welcome back to Thai Dreamer. I'm standing in the middle of a quiet field of crumbling brick towers, about an hour north of Bangkok. Birds, a few tourists, some cows in the distance. It looks peaceful, forgotten even. But 300 years ago, this exact spot was one of the biggest, richest, most powerful cities on planet Earth. 1 million people lived here. It was bigger than London, bigger than Paris. And then, in a matter of months, it was wiped off the map so completely that most of the world forgot it ever existed. This is the story of Ayutthaya, the lost city that beat London. Let's get into it. Let's rewind. The year is 1351, when Europe is being ravaged by the Black Death. A king founds a new capital on an island where 3 rivers meet, right here in what's now central Thailand. He calls it Ayutthaya. And the location is genius. Those 3 rivers wrap around the city like a natural moat, protection on every side and connected straight to the sea. So, Ayutthaya doesn't just sit there. It grows. It trades. It becomes the beating heart of a kingdom that will dominate this region for over 400 years. Fast forward a couple of centuries, and Ayutthaya becomes something Europeans genuinely could not believe when they saw it. The Portuguese called it the Venice of the East, and they meant it literally. The city was laced with canals instead of streets. People got around by boat, and rising out of that water were hundreds of temples, their spires and roofs covered in gold, glittering in the tropical sun. Foreign visitors wrote home, describing it as one of the wealthiest, most beautiful, most cosmopolitan cities they had ever laid eyes on. And here's the part that really gets me. This wasn't just a Thai city. It was one of the most international places in the entire world. There were whole neighborhoods of foreigners living here. Chinese, Japanese, Persian, Indian, Portuguese, Dutch, French. Merchants and diplomats from across the globe, all doing business in one glittering, water-wrapped mega city. Ayutthaya wasn't on the edge of the world. For a while, it basically was the center of it. Okay, now let me hit you with the statistic that made me want to make this entire video. By the year 1700, Ayutthaya had a population of around 1 million people. 1 million. Which, at that exact moment in history, likely made it the largest city in the entire world. Let that sink in with some context. At the same time, London, one of the most advanced cities in all of Europe, had roughly 600,000 people. Ayutthaya was almost twice the size. And New York? New York City at the time had fewer than 5,000 residents. 5,000. A rounding error next to Ayutthaya's million. So when I say this lost city was bigger than London, I'm not exaggerating for the thumbnail. It genuinely, factually was. This was, for a moment, the biggest city humanity had. So, how does a city this massive, this rich, this powerful just vanish? Here's where the story turns dark. For centuries, Ayutthaya had a rival, the Burmese kingdom to the west. There had been wars before, sieges before, and Ayutthaya had always survived behind its rivers and walls. But in the 1760s, the Burmese came back with everything they had. They laid siege to the city for around 14 months. 14 months of being surrounded, starved, and bombarded. And in 1767, the wars finally broke. The Burmese army poured in, and what happened next is one of the great tragedies of Southeast Asian history. They didn't just conquer Ayutthaya, they razed it. The city was sacked and burned to the ground. The golden temples were stripped and torched. Invaders melted the gold right off the sacred Buddha statues. The palaces were destroyed. Tens of thousands of people were killed or dragged off as captives. And maybe, worst of all for history itself, the records, the arts, the literature, centuries of civilization's memory, most of it went up in flames. A 417-year-old superpower, the biggest city on Earth, was reduced to smoking ruins in a matter of months. The survivors scattered. The capital eventually moved south to a little trading post that would grow into a city we now call Bangkok. And Ayutthaya was simply left behind, abandoned to the jungle.
Oh, going down.
Which brings us back to me, standing in these ruins today. And now that you know the story, walking through here feels completely different. These aren't just old brick towers. This is the skeleton of the greatest city of each age. You walk past the bases of temples that were once wrapped in gold. You see rows of Buddha statues with their heads gone, literally decapitated in the sack of the city and never repaired. And then there's the most famous site in all of Ayutthaya, maybe in all of Thailand, in the ruins of a temple called Wat Mahathat. There's a single stone Buddha head tangled up in the roots of a fig tree. Over centuries, the tree slowly grew around it, cradling it, until the face and the wood became one. Nobody planned it. Nature just quietly reclaimed a piece of this fallen empire and turned it into something serene and unforgettable. People come from all over the world just to sit in front of that one head. Here's what I can't stop thinking about, standing here in the quiet. Ayutthaya was, for a time, the biggest and richest city on the entire planet. A place people believed would last forever. And now it's cows and crumbling brick and a head in a tree. Every empire that ever felt permanent felt exactly the way ours does now. That's not a depressing thought to me. Honestly, it's a humbling one. It makes you want to pay attention to actually see the places you are lucky enough to stand in while they are still standing. And the beautiful thing is, Ayutthaya didn't fully die. It's protected now as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and you can walk right through it. The memory survived the fire after all. So that's Ayutthaya, the lost city that was once bigger than London, the Venice of the East. A million-person superpower burned into a field of ghosts in a single brutal year. And the wildest part? It's barely an hour from Bangkok. You can literally hop a cheap train in the morning and walk through the ruins of the biggest city the world once had by lunchtime. I honestly think it's one of the most incredible day trip on earth. And almost nobody outside Thailand knows the full story.